I know. I totally agree with you. Like coming to the season, I predicted 9-3. And the biggest reason I predicted 9-3 because Sean Clifford was such a wild card that I thought this team had 10-win talent, but I wasn't sure what in the world they were going to get out of the quarterback. And that's part of what makes this so frustrating on my end is what we saw through the first 5 games and that first half against Iowa. That Sean Clifford, had you told me before the season they were going to get that Sean Clifford, I definitely would have predicted 9 or 10 wins, excuse me. And, like you said, you predict one thing before the season and you got to keep that in mind. But as the season progresses and expectations change, that's where it definitely gets frustrating because, whenever they're beating Iowa 17-3 late in the second quarter and appear to be well on their way to 6-0, being ranked number 2 in the country, nobody out there is going to sit there and still tell you, hey, this is an 8 or 9 win team. And they were right for not feeling that way. Like I remember our Black Shoe Diaries group chat and the Slack channel in the closing minutes, the first half against Iowa, we were all very confident that Penn State may have been the best team in the Big Ten at that point. And things have just completely unraveled since then. What makes it so frustrating is it was the injury, at least for me, is that it was the injury thing. And that's when you truly sit here and wonder what if. If Clifford never gets hurt and they lose these games, fine, they weren't good enough. But we saw when he was healthy, they were good enough. And even today, like you said, it's very clear he's still not 100%. There was a throw on their final drive of the first half where they wound up settling for a field goal to make it 7-6 at halftime. But he had John Lovett going down the middle of the field wide open. And Lovett probably walks into the end zone and Cliff just he overthrew him. I don't know if he didn't plan his feet, if he couldn't because of the pain, whatever it was. But that's a throw that early in the season Cliff definitely makes. And if you're leading 10-7 at halftime, again, totally different game. There are a couple crossing routes, say, that could have gone for first downs, at least, if not bigger gains, where Cliff just missed the guy. He's not in, like you said, you got to give him all the credit in the world. Anyone who's watched Penn State the last 3 years will tell you Sean Clifford's one of the toughest players in the country. The dude has gone out there repeatedly, nowhere near 100%, and given the Nittany Lions all he's had. But, when you're not 100%, you can only do so much, especially against the defensive caliber of Michigan's. And that's what we saw today. And that's what, for me, makes it such a frustrating season for Penn State is it's a what-if season due to an injury to your quarterback. Like I said, if you come out and you lose to Iowa, you lose to Ohio State, to Michigan, to Illinois, and you're healthy, okay, because then you weren't talented enough, you weren't good enough, whatever it is. The talent's there on this team, and that's where the what-if becomes so frustrating. Because if Sean Clifford just does not get hurt, who knows where they're at today included. Because like I said, there were a few throws today that could have gone for big gains. One that would have been an easy touchdown that Cliff didn't make, and it looked like he didn't make them, partially because of being hurt. Now, some of that could have been that Michigan pass rush was getting home. But at the same time, if you're playing at 100%, that pass rush doesn't affect you as much either. Like you said, anytime he would take a hit, you'd see him hunched over. You could tell he was hurting. If you're not hurting after taking hits, you're going to be more likely. It's human nature. It's easier to hang in that pocket and take that hit, move around and take a hit because you're not in pain. And just that still continues to be the biggest thing that plagues this team. And, there's 2 more regular season games in the bowl game left, and they can still finish this thing strong. Like you said, there's no reason they should lose to Rutgers. If they lose to Rutgers next week, then I don't even know what to say.
Then I will jump in the fire, everyone.
Listen, and when you jump at that point, for the give a little insight on, I know Tim and I kind of talk about how when Tim and I are feeling optimistic, things are going good. For Ellie to ever feel pessimistic, things are a complete disaster at that point. But no, and even Michigan State's a team Penn State can beat. Michigan State's secondary has really struggled this year, and that's what Penn State does best. So, you can still come out. You can finish 8-4, finish the season with a victory over a ranked team in Michigan State, win your bowl game, get to 9 wins. Again, like you said, preseason, predicting 8 or 9 wins. If they can still get to that, you'll take that. And a big thing is, like you said, this recruiting class that's coming in, it has a lot of guys who not just being highly rated, but guys who should contribute early as well. I know we've talked a lot on the show about Drew Allard, the quarterback, but even a running back. We've talked about how much running back has struggled this year outside of Kevon Lee. They're bringing the number 1 running back in the country, Nick Singleton, who should contribute right away as well. So it's going to continue to not be a lack of talent moving forward. Penn State, as long as James Franklin's here, it's never going to be a lack of talent. It's going to be staying healthy. It's going to be avoiding some of the boneheaded coaching decisions that, to the credit of Franklin's staff, I think anyone who's watching this will agree he has grown leaps and bounds as a game day coach since he got here. He still has some head scratchers like today, but I'm the one who's completely off topic, ranting and raving, but it's the talent's going to be there. And I think the biggest thing for Penn State is just get to the finish line at this point. If you can win these last 2 games and win your bowl game, go 9-4, you still will gladly take that. Just you got to avoid complete disaster. Make sure you beat Rutgers at this point. I know James Franklin's all about the 1-0 mentality, and that's probably never been more true than it is right now, because you absolutely cannot lose to Rutgers with everything else that has unfolded this season.
Yeah, and I think we've exhausted every possibility with this particular game, right? There really isn't much else to digest, because
really, like we said, it came down to
the defense did well.
Special teams, yeah, but that's been the story of the season. The defense has been awesome. They pressured Cade McNamara all game. To McNamara's credit, he made some really good throws. Michigan made some tough contested catches, and the Nittany Lion defense, when they needed a turnover, they stepped up. They got that turnover. They put the offense in position to score a touchdown. And the offense didn't capitalize. The offense could hold the 3, and it came back to bite them. I mean, it's anyone who watches this game and faults Penn State's defense and faults Brent Pry, I would be concerned that either A, you're watching a different game, or something's wrong with you and you just don't get it, because the defense was terrific today. Pry continues to be terrific. I think I've said it all year. I think this is the best coaching job Brent Pry has done as Penn State's defense coordinator, which is saying something because he's had some really good seasons.
And I will say this, I think James Franklin's willingness to tap into the portal is going to be paramount in this particular offseason, because we're going to need to plug a lot of holes on defense. And to their credit, right, they did exactly that. Derek Tangelo and Eddie Katie are proof positive that they can go out and do it. But I think the other benefit of this particular recruiting class is that, not to get too speculative here, but say Clifford comes back, there's going to be somebody behind him. There are going to be 2 somebodies behind him that can actually throw a football. not to be too harsh on the people on the current roster, right? But I have much more confidence in both Drew Alar and Pribula coming in than I do on the people who effectively could not see the field when Sean Clifford wasn't at 100%. So, like, if something were to happen, and I'm hoping that is not the case and we don't have to test that scenario, but if something were to happen next season and one of those 2 guys had to step in, I feel much more confident that Penn State would still be able to move the ball over what we have. And I'm, again, getting way off topic here, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if one of those 2 guys is not with the team come the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility in the portal era. I personally am just going to continue to stick to the all sunshine and roses edition I've painted in my head, where Aller comes in, starts for 3 years, is awesome, goes to the pros, and still allows Pribula to take over as a redshirt sophomore at that point. So everybody's happy and everybody plays, and Penn State gets all the good quarterbacks. But no, like you said, if something does go haywire at quarterback next season, then they're going to be in a much better position. And, I wouldn't totally rule out Sean Clifford coming back for 6th year either. He certainly did not dismiss that at all this past week when meeting with the media, when he said he hasn't even thought if this is going to be his last game at Beaver Stadium yet or not. And I think Cliff could definitely use another year for his draft stock and everything. So I wouldn't rule that out. But no, like you said, today's game, I think things have been exhausted on our end. The defense was awesome. The offense didn't finish drives. And that fake field goal, just debacle, disaster, chaos, calamity, whatever you want to call it. Those are the 3 big takeaways from this game and the 3 things that were most contributing to the outcome.
Indeed. And if we had some semblance of balance, right, things wouldn't need to be on Clifford so much. Because going back to what we were talking about being 100%, right? Like the other part about this is that Clifford actually scrambled and took off and run a couple of times today. But if he were feeling better, it's very likely that he takes off and run a couple of more times instead of taking the sacks that he did or throwing the ball away a couple of times. He just like didn't have anywhere to go and basically threw the ball where no one could catch it. It's very likely that a couple more of those times he runs, and the few times where he did and he got caught, he's very likely not getting caught and instead getting a first down. So I am definitely excited for the next few years. Now my dreams are red shirts or maybe Drew Allard backs up Clifford and Pre will arrest shirts. So things same result but different sequence of events. But yeah, I think this game came about just as everyone predicted. It was very close. A couple of plays made all of the difference. I actually predicted this exact same score, 21-17. I just happened to have the teams flipped. But ultimately, this is football. A couple of inches here and there, one missed tackle here and there, one misdirected play here and there, and you have the difference, right? The difference between a 17-14 final versus a 21-17 final.